Welcome everyone to the Lo-Fi Poli-Sci Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Pickering. That's right, Lo-Fi as in low fidelity, low quality, in-your-face, messy as can be global news show. Here we're going to talk about that famous question, what's going on in the world today? We'll be covering 5 headlines from across the globe and then choose one to go into a more detailed analysis. But first, happy Earth Day, everyone. We'll come back to this in about 4 minutes. But now, the news fresh off the press. Source, AP News International. Video shows thief stole Van Gogh painting with sledgehammer. The article states that a thief walked up to a glass-windowed shop in the Netherlands, used a sledgehammer to break in, enters, and later exits with the Van Gogh and the sledgehammer. This happened on March 30th. The implications. 2 things, Lo-Fi Nation. This was not a thief. Thieves are skilled criminals that infiltrate sophisticatedly guarded places. This was a thug with a hammer. Secondly, happened on March 30th, and it's just getting reported on? Come on, this was a Van Gogh! If the coppers wanted help finding the thief, they should have released the video long ago, and media should have picked it up. I'm sure the video would have went viral by now. Moving on. Up next, source, BBC News, Business. Facebook's $5.7 billion bet on India's richest man, Mukesh Ambani. They've now become the owners of just under 10% of the telecommunications part of Reliance Industries. Facebook states how this investment, along with its 400 million Indian users of WhatsApp, demonstrates their commitment to India. Reliance states how this new venture will further aid in the development of the country. The implications. Wait, what? Haven't I heard this somewhere before? Oh, yes, tech companies promising to make the world a better place? Well, thank you, Facebook and Reliance. And a point of analysis. Facebook, a name on your screen, did not spend $5.7 billion on this company. That's somebody's money for sure. And hey, Facebook, how about you do something about that WhatsApp spreading false information in India leading to people dying, as reported just this week and has happened far too often? Apologies, Lo-Fi Nation, I digress. But students of Lo-Fi Poli-Sci, you see the story, you see the numbers, you know the implications. Stay connected, not disaffected. And guess what, folks? It's Weekly Wednesdays with Transparency International. Today we're continuing our journey down Central America and focus on Nicaragua. Geography lesson. Nicaragua's northern border is Honduras. The Caribbean Sea, its eastern border. Costa Rica, its southern border. And the Pacific Ocean, its western border. Nicaragua in 2018 had a World Bank recorded GDP per capita just over $2,000 a year. As a point of reference for listeners so they can begin to have perspective on why corruption in a developing country appears the way that it does. And remember, Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index ranks countries and territories between 1 and 180, as well as providing a score from 0 to 100, 0 being very corrupt and 100 being very clean. And in 2019, Nicaragua scored a 22 out of 100, leaning closer to the very corrupt part of the scale, and ranked 161 out of 180 countries and territories in the world. Below Nicaragua at 162 is Cambodia, and above it at 160 is Eritrea. To be clear, Nicaragua ranks as one of the top 21 most corrupt countries and territories in the world. Let's meet their president, Daniel Ortega. Daniel Ortega is leader of a political party called the FSLN. Listeners may be more familiar with the term Sandinista. In 1979, the Sandinistas took control of the country, battled a civil war in the 1980s, where the CIA sponsored the opposition known as the Contras. Ever heard of the Iran-Contra scandal? Ortega first became president in 1984 and ruled until 1990, when the Sandinistas lost power for the first time in over a decade. In 2006, Ortega came back and won the presidency and hasn't left since. 2006 to 2020. You do the math. The elections are consistently labeled as flawed and corrupt. Ortega rules with an iron fist and suppresses all protests to his opposition, or from the opposition. Although the country has the shell of a democracy, make no mistake, Lo-Fi Nation, this is another neo-authoritarian regime. We're watching, Ortega. We're watching. And now for our Headline in the Spotlight segment. Source, Reuters World News. Note to Lo-Fi listeners, this is combined coverage of 2 independent stories from Reuters, though they should be discussed together. First story. Iran's Guard says, launched first military satellite into orbit. Second story. Trump instructs U.S. Navy to destroy Iranian gunboats if they harass our ships at sea. Last week, we brought you the story of 11 Iranian gunboats reportedly harassing U.S. naval vessels in international waters. Iran denies this claim and says the U.S. was being overly dramatic. Side note, overly dramatic are my words, not the words of the official Iranian state describing the events. Earlier today, the U.S. president sent a clear response to last week's events. Begin quote. I have instructed the United States Navy to shoot down and destroy any and all Iranian gunboats if they harass our ships at sea. End quote. And that was a tweet. The background and implications of the story. Tensions between the U.S. and Iran have been increasing for some time, whether it's pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal, assassinating by drone a leading Iranian general, bombing U.S. bases in the Middle East. Both of today's stories add to that list of events, increasing tensions between the two countries. The U.S. now is openly threatening attacks, and Iran is openly launching a satellite into space that, theoretically, the rockets used to do so could be used for long-range missiles, especially since the satellite and launch are owned and operated by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Come on, people. It's only Wednesday. We'd like to make it to Fun Day Friday. So let's take a step back and just breathe. Because yes, it's Earth Day. And a last piece of news from Mother Earth. And what does she say she wants us to do today on this 2020 Earth Day? Be nice, be kind, plant a tree, don't cut your grass, relax in the cool breeze as the sun soaks over us all. And remember, we're never alone. We're always we. Side note, I don't want listeners to think that I hear voices and claim Mother Earth is speaking to me. Let's be clear, she speaks to us all. With the sounds of the wind and the crash of the waves, the songs of birds and the rustling of the leaves, the clashing of lightning and rolling of thunder, she's always speaking. Let's all, today, on this 2020 Global Earth Day, take a little extra time to listen and be the we that we truly are. And that's a brief snapshot of what's going on in the world today. Please write in with your questions, comments, or request of countries for our news segments to LoFiPoliSci@planetmail.com. That's Lofi, L-O-F-I, Poly, P-O-L-I, Sci@planetmail.com. Let me say thank you so much for listening. Stay safe, wash those hands, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Lo-Fi Poli-Sci podcast. Happy Earth Day. Pickering, signing off.